Okay, so I think so. Michael, you just talked about the material design. So, like, what are some of the best practice that you have seen, like real cases, implement like material design, like how you work with developers on implementing that, and what are some of the difficulties and challenges in the process? Yeah.
在我本身觉得 material design 在应用上，因为我们现在全部的 Google 的应用都已经很多，大概好像全部吧，都已经变成了用 material design，大家可以去用一下。我觉得那个，尤其是比如说 YouTube 跟YouTube 做那个强烈颜色做得非常好，我自己本身很喜欢。在 Google Maps 地图上，它生成那个实际表面的那个 tangible surface 那概念做得很棒。它尤其是那个focus， 你去用那个floating action button 去做这个地图navigation 导航的这个功能做得很棒，我自己本身很喜欢。这可以去看一下。如果是说不是 Google 的应用，那有一个我觉得蛮不错，叫 Journey， 是新加坡一个developer 所开发的，做一个journal 的这一个应用，我觉得很不错。那在这个有什么东西要注意的地方呢？那如果其实我刚才讲说 material design， 刚才常讲 lollipop， 其实不只是 lollipop 上可以做 material design， 在 lollipop 之前 KitKat 或者 ice cream sandwich、jelly bean 之前的这些也可以做，只是你要用相对的 app compat library。那刚才我秀一些资源，对吗？你们如果去androiddeveloper.blogspot.com 那个 blogger 上这个，我们常做一个 Android developer， 常会上去 post 一些新的文件。有一个文件那时候是讲 material design， 也有代码有 code， 让你们去参考，说怎么样去做lollipop 之前的 compatibility， 那个很值得参考。
Cole, do you have any example to add? What as we talk off stage? Okay. So YouTube would be YouTube 本身会是一个很好的 example， 所以最好的了解就是就是 real case 在 material design 方面的，大家就看 Google 的应用肯定都是最先遵守这些的，对。
Like there's a couple. I mean, all the Google apps are very good examples of material design, like the simplification, really focus on bright colors, a lot of the scrolling mechanics. There's a couple of other other applications that are very pretty good examples too. Airbnb has a very good browsing when you go check out a lot of the photos of like a lot of the listings and the places. I think Uber recently redesigned their app too. A lot of the bigger apps have started redesigning a lot of their apps to kind of create that like more friendly interface, and also just a lot more like the simplification of being able to scroll, really focus on the elements and a lot of bright colors. And I think the users are definitely engaging a lot more within those applications as well.
Okay. So do you have any specific in Japan and Korea as well?
In Japan market, there are. So recently, the material design is getting popular among the application developers, and the money for which is managing the individual people's money in and out. That application corresponded for the material design last week, and they doing available right now. They increasing the KPI stuff with the material design. That's the trend in Japan. And that would be the success story in Japan market. Then probably everyone's in Japan market will follow those trend momentum of the material design.
And in Korea, the most of inquiries on material design are coming from newspapers and magazines applications. So the one example is the Bingo, for example. They are very popular magazines applications, and then now they adopted some animations or some the UX design of material design. So that is one example, but still they are working on it. So still I cannot say there are many examples yet, but I'm pretty sure that it will be very popular.
Okay. So 然后我会 mix 一个那个大家提的问题啊，这位是 曾思杰，然后问的问题是，进入 Google Play 的推荐是否一定要满足 Material Design，然后是否一定要phone 和 tablet 完整支持？So the question is, if you want to get featured on Google Play for apps, is it a prerequisite to have like Material Design and also design for both phone and tablet? So it's more for the maybe for the BD team. Also, Michael, I think you can also answer that as well.
我先来吧。就是要不要先做 material design 才可以 get feature？ 我觉得这个问题有点问错了。为什么这么说呢？因为其实简单的答案是不是？你不需要做 material design 才 get feature。可是 get feature 呢，其实要做的时候要怎么 get feature？ 是做一个好的应用。好的应用包括做 material design， 包括你比如说你在你的 review 上常去看有用户给你们什么 review， 去做一些 feedback， 或者把你们的 content 内容做得好。其实很多东西加起来就可以 get you feature， 不只是做 material design。material design 是一个我觉得是还蛮关键，因为它把你的应用的质量提高，我觉得是最重要的。
Is material design required?
The material design is not the mandatory for the featuring in Japan, but the
What about design for apps and tablets?
guide for more like core app guideline is a most mandatory, and also the backbone stuff, and then using the Android UI UX. That's the important things for as a minimum guideline.
I think material design is I feel it's
most
kind of
advanced UI example.
Yeah, it's just
right?
the Google suggestions to the app developers. I can give you one example. There's one camera applications, and then they are. I think their UX is really good, really cool. But this is a real case. I gave a present to my father, and then he started to use that applications. But somehow, there's a phone call coming when he used that the camera. But he know that when he pressed the volume button, then he actually muted the rings, right? Before they got the phone call. But that camera applications actually they are using that volume keys for zooming. So there's a phone call, but my father tried to mute it, but it's still zooming. So it's very. So my father's feedback is, oh, this is very difficult for me. So that means that even though you are spending a lot of resources to develop your applications, to users, they might think that it's kind of difficult for me, unless you are having design or consistent way of using the Android application. So I think that's why I'm saying that the material design is kind of suggestions, and then also core app guideline is talking about navigations or back buttons to make consistent user experience to every applications featured by Google Play.
Yeah, it's definitely not a requirement. I think what you want to think about is your user experience. And so like what you want your users, I mean, for them to be able to understand like how do you navigate within your application, how do you do specific actions, especially within your applications, and also like if they have sharing capabilities, how they share that. So you want to make sure that's like very obvious. I think the two things that you really want to take note is that the UI and UX navigations can be very different between a phone and a tablet. Especially within applications. Time and time again, I see a lot of, let's say, menu navigation bars not really fitting, let's say, to a tablet form factor versus, let's say, a mobile device. Also, if you remember a lot of, or at least a smartphone, and a smartphone actually have calling capabilities, right? Whereas Whereas a tablet doesn't have calling capabilities. But then when you think about, let's say, portrait versus landscape mode, in a tablet, not a lot of people, everyone kind of uses a tablet in landscape mode predominantly, sometimes portrait. Whereas in a phone, it's portrait. So you always want to think about at what are the use cases that your users will be using your applications, and then how are they going to differ between let's say, a smartphone device and also a tablet device.
Okay, thank you. 所以其实大家可能听到总结一下，就是 Material Design 不是一个必要的只有完成 Material Design， 但是 Android Design Guideline 可以说是这个基本的这个线吧。如果你的就是 Apps 想被 feature on Google Play 的话，然后我有一个问题问 Dana， 关于policy 相关的，就是有什么工具这是张海军问的问题，有什么工具可以让开发者发布前了解关键词是否违规？因为你刚才在演讲的时候谈到了 keyword spam， 对，所以 it's about keyword spam。
工具应该是说，你们应该先要去我们的 Policy Center 去了解一下，我们有做一些example， 譬如说刚刚也有提到，譬如说重复的关键字，还有跟你们的 APP 无关的关键字，还有 App Title 那种都会牵扯到我们的keyword spam， 所以你一定要去详细的去了解说我们的条款还有协议方面，然后一个小提示就是你去编辑你的description 的时候呢，你一定就是简单易懂，就是尽量简短你的说明，这个是最佳的一个很好的一个例子。然后你要去编辑这些内容，这样不要提太长的一些文字，或者说很啰嗦、太详细，我们也没办法去接受这样子的行为。谢谢。
OK。好，那我再问一个不是观众问的问题，我原来问的就是关于这个 beta testing and stage rollout. It's a unique feature offered by Google Play. So what are some like best practice by developer that you observe in your specific market that you can share with the audience here? Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of our app developers do use beta testing and stage rollouts, given the sheer number of Android devices out there, and it's a good way to kind of actually test out which functions and features and UX and UI is actually going to work with a lot of those specific users. Facebook actually uses this a lot. They actually make very extensive use of stage rollouts to test stability within their application, also testing out new features, new layouts, and then they do this very extensively. They even have like another group of users that they use that does like, I think it's like closed alpha testing for like very different application. But I mean, what's great with Google is that because the there's no really certification process or like an official QA you need to publish your application. As long as you publish an application that is very safe for all users and it passes all the like all the standard checks, you're going to see the build and you're going to see it live within hours, right? And you can update as many times as you want without having to wait for people, wait for anyone to say, hey, like this is now approved. And so that's the power of being able to rapidly iterate, iterate your product according to what your users' feedback is going to say. Because, like, devices are going to be very different. People are going to have a different network, mobile broadband infrastructures all around the world. And especially if you want to create a product that can hit global scale and distribution, making very extensive use of this feature is going to be up to your advantage.
For launching the like the next major version app, and then stage rollout is pretty common in Japan market too. It's pretty safety to roll out the next version of the like the application. Then they check in like 10% and 50% check in the bugs, and they fix the bugs, and then roll out 100% like using like 2 weeks, and that's pretty common in the Japan market too.
In Korea too.
So you should use the stage rolling.
I think one thing to note is that beta testing does not affect your ratings. Also, beta testing 不会影响你们的 rating， 可是stage rollout 会 ，because stage rollout 是在 production 里头的，对吗？ beta testing 不是，所以这是要很关键一个地方要懂。 要不然
但在 beta testing 阶段是可以付费的，用户可以付费的，对不对？
就可以。
对。
对。
所以如果你们就是应用希望在小部分的人群里来测试的话，这个 beta testing alpha beta testing 这个还是很重要的一个 feature。就刚才这个 Michael 说的，因为用户是不能去评分的，所以如果他觉得你的应用有一些问题或者什么的，他也不能愤怒的这个给你评分啊。然后当然就是如果进入 production 就可以了。Okay. So my next question will be the way how developers should communicate with Google Play team to Dana, maybe some other people's. Yeah, 就是跟 Google Play team 沟通上需要注意的一些因素，因为刚才你可能把你的邮箱
对，我刚
邮箱有公布，对。
分享我们的那个中文团队的一个 email address 嘛 ，play-dev。
对，我先插一句，就是那个 Dana 跟我分析过，有的 developer 写邮件，写出去的邮件的例子就是说一句话，然后夸一个问号没了，然后这个没有办法，不太好处理。
对，很多中国开发者他会截一张图，譬如说一个 screenshot， 然后写说 why， 然后问号。然后我就打不开那张图啊，然后我也不知道你在问什么问题，所以希望你们就是提给我们问题的时候呢，一定要有一个，一定去用一个那个 developer account 的 email， 然后跟我们讲说你们的账户是什么，然后还有提到你有问题的 package name 是什么，然后问题的一些详细的描述，当然一定最好是有一个 error message 的一个 screenshot， 或者是你在哪一个步骤里面有问题。你就是最好是详细的每个 procedure 写给我们，我们才有办法很快的去回复你们。那我还有另外一个例子是，就是有一些 developer 他们就是习惯可能个性急，每5分钟就寄给我们一个同样的问题，或者是每1个小时会寄到我们的这个 email 里面，那我们都被视为是一个问题，所以你不管每天寄给我们10封、100封都是一样的问题的话，我们还是就是我们会尽量处理，但是我们就是在2天的工作时间内会回复给你们，所以请你们耐心等待，对，不要一直发 repeat 的一个 ticket 给我们，这样，谢谢。
OK， 所以大家可能知道就是。我得说一下，这个 email 的支持应该是中国开发者特别的，对，是中文或者英文都可以的，对，所以还是非常方便的。OK，yeah， okay, so I'm going to also ask another question from the audience, from Jenny Chen. So if your app language is in English, should you still have localized listing? So if an app like is still in, so the app itself is in English, the interface in English, but do they have, for example, they launch in Japan, they need to localize the title and introduction and all that?
It depends on what region you're launching in. So I mean, it's always best to localize. Even if you localize your app description, it's always best to localize the app within the application itself. I mean, it just shows that you care about your user in that market, despite what it is. But obviously, that will depend on which market that you're in. Some markets, let's say like Japan, Korea, even some European markets like Russia and in Brazil, they definitely prefer seeing an application in their own local language because not everyone speaks English there very well. But I think it really just depends on the market, right? Like you're perfectly fine using English in Singapore, using English in even some Southeast Asian countries. But a lot of that depends on the type of application you have. A picture photo taking or video sharing app is going to be much easier to localize than let's say a very like a retail commerce app. That's going to require a lot of text, right? So a lot of it depends on the type of application you have, which region or market that you're launching in. And then, but I mean, also take advantage of some of the services that Google has. We offer in-app translation within the developer console. You can actually take your text strings and actually go to some of the translators out with translation services we offer and be like, hey, like, help me translate my app. We do offer those services. That kind of does it right in a house, and it's right from the developer console.
For Japan market, if you provide and distribute the not that much required to lead in the English, then probably you can distribute in English in the application, but you should change the titles and then the descriptions in Japanese. So first look, the user decided whether they will download or not. So at the first view of the titles and description should be translated in Japanese. If you think that your application is not that much request to, the ability of the English skills.
Pretty much same in Korea, so you need to localize. So, and then one, I have seen some 2 or 3 applications which is very interesting. They are asking users to localize. Yeah. So is
like volunteer?
Oh yeah, volunteer.
Oh.
So they ask them to be volunteering as a localization people, and then it's very interesting for us to see that many people.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, many people are very. They really want to become a volunteer for that applications. So I think you can consider that option.
Well, that's why. I mean, that's why app design is very important, right? Really thinking about your UX and making sure that you have the right call to actions. I mean, the perfect scenario is you don't need text to explain what a user needs to do within your application. That means you have designed a very good app if there's no need for even language understanding to understand what to do. And so if you can achieve that, then really language shouldn't matter, right? But we're not there yet. So, I mean, there's obviously going to be some applications where you need some localization.
And recent top application providing like a game tutorial in the applications. It's not actually the game, but they're giving the tutorial like a game. So try to force the users to use the all functions as a tutorial. That's the one suggestion for the application developers too.
Okay, so my next question is for Michael on the DevRel team. So we know one of the unique feature about Android platform is about the notification, right? But there's is there a way to balance leveraging notification feature and without spamming the users? What would be your suggestion? 你建议是什么？
Yeah, notification 跟 spam 的其实很多时候是一线之差。我是觉得说，有几样东西可以建议的。一就是在 notification 不是 notification 上有不同的 setting， 对吗？有5个 setting 吧，一个是max、high、default、low 跟 minimum。那你们可以上去 android.developer.com 上去看一下那个setting 不同的 notification 的 setting 会有什么样的effect 在那个应用上。那我是觉得，如果可以的话，越是如此的话，就应该是把 notification setting set 到或是 low 或者是 minimum， 因为用户通常都不想看到 notification， 通常是的。那如果是 minimum 的话，就不会在那个 lock screen 出来，只会在那个 one bar 里面出来，所以这是比较好的一个用户的经验，我自己本身觉得。那还有另外一样可以做的就是，当你们做了一个 notification 的变动之后，请你们在应用的 Play Store 的 listing 上track 住用户的一些反馈。很多时候你 notification 换了之后，用户就有反馈说，如果是他觉得是 spam 的话，一定会跟你吵的，因为跟你说是给你很多的一个星或者很多的负面的反馈。那如果你在你做那个改变之后的 listing 去关注的话，很快就会知道用户的想法。再者可以再做的事就是做一个 stage rollout 或者 beta testing， 就是刚才Leon 和我们其他的人都有说的，可以把这个变动放在某一些 segment of 你们的用户，让他们去试一下， 看是不是 spam 或者是 notification。我总是觉得说最大的宗旨是，如果你是用户，你会觉得这是在阻碍你吗？你通常你自己本身的身为一个用户的感觉，就大概很多时候都是外面你用户的感觉。
OK， 谢谢。Anything to add on your OK？ So 待会儿我们也会 take 一些 live question， 你们可以先准备一下啊，然后再替那个 audience 问一个问题。这个是曹真的问题，他是说就是 Google Play 能够提供的就是非付费的这个推广资源有哪些 ？OK， 这可能也挺有意思。就是so this audience ask what are some of the non-paid like promotion service that can be offered in Google Play? Like if you instead of like buying advertising to promote their apps, what are some by Google Play? So they can get like yeah, something like that, yeah.
So I think
For non-games, yeah.
So so the Google Play started to invest in TV commercial. So in the U.S., Japan, Korea, we started to do the TV commercial, which is out of store marketing. So the application can be included in those TV commercial. I think that is one of opportunity that you can get from Google.
So, I mean, ultimately, it starts out with you really got to build a good application, good quality application that's following the core app quality guidelines, also making sure you follow our policy. And then also, I mean, we talk about a lot about featuring. And so, like, I mean, the first step is how do you get an application that's worthy of being featured by the Play Store in any of our major markets? And that's, of course, following all the guidelines and making sure you do that. And then once you fulfill that, then there's all these other opportunities to be placed. I mean, there's editor's choice. There's also opportunities to be in many of our curated pages and collections that occur throughout the year. We do a number of seasonal promotions, ranging from New Year's, both the Roman and also the Lunar New Year promotions, depending on which market you're in. Also, like the holiday promotions that are obviously upcoming. And then even on top of that, as Keish mentioned, a lot of the we are now doing a lot of TV commercials, a lot of brand marketing in a number of outlets, and also we have social media online marketing channels in order to expand a brand. Because I mean, our platform is only successful because of the content that you as a developer are making for us, and we want to make sure we highlight the best. And who knows, like, I think we're going to see there's a lot of great developer talent that's out here in this region, and we'd love to see, like, someone from here break out into more.
Okay. 然后他还问了一个问题，就是说新品还是这位曹真，就是新品上线之后如何获得更好的知名度和表现。So when the apps just newly released, how to get a better performance, like anything that they should be aware of. I think that one may be related to like stage rollout, but any other suggestions to them if they want to publish a game, it's newly published apps, what they should be aware and suggestion to them.
User feedback. User feedback
and reply to user feedback, and also they got a good user review. That's making the good start to distribute the applications on the Play.
And sometimes you don't need to do beta testing too. I mean, there are some developers that choose to actually soft launch in certain markets to be able to test whether that application is a right fit. So for example, I mean, you wouldn't want to launch your application in the United States if you've never done any testing or have no idea whether this specific application is something that's going to be very, very attractive or very engaging with a US user. So you may try to launch this app, let's say, in Canada or in New Zealand or Australia or in an English-speaking market just to kind of test the waters a little bit and see what the initial feedback is. And then that way you can kind of test against bugs and also test against what a typical, like, let's say, user engagement or behavior is going to be like, and so which will actually get you ready to kind of launch much bigger, let's say, in the United States.
I think the Yoshi's point about the customer support is really important. So you need to manage user ratings. So when developer launch their applications, there are a lot of comments after that, and then I suggest you to review that comments and the reply for that accordingly, so that user can get some positive feeling on your services, and then you can get some sense that user need this, user needs this functions. So okay, you can improve your applications, and then the user rating is one of factors that we identify that this is good application for users. So maybe we can consider that for our featuring process too. So not the fake review. Yeah, that's true. Definitely.
请不要做一些虚假的评价跟评分，对。
所以用户评价很重要，但是真实的用户评价很重要。用户评分也很重要。所以刚才还谈到了，就是你们可以在一些，如果你们想在比如说英语国家 launch， 可以先找一些其他的英语国家先去尝试一下。对。Okay, that's for new game release. So I got a question on user engagement. So how do you increase the user engagement in the particular apps? Anyone? Any suggestion? So after they download the apps, how do?
Yeah， 我是觉得说，就是在英文有一句叫 "Content is king"， 对吗？内容就是皇帝。那就内容是最重要的，你内容好，自然而然就会有 user engagement。我觉得就是一个新闻的应用，应该那个 content 是非常的更新的，每天都有更换的，这是最重要。我自己人觉得。第二就是设计，好的设计可以弥补很多其他的不足。好的一个很好的用户体验，那个 back button 按的时候它会走。或者这个用户 Android 用户他过来很容易就得心应手用的应用，这它也会 increase 它 user engagement。
I know an application which is used car trading. So I don't search car every day, right? So the native of that services is actually we expect that the user engagement is super low, right? So the app developers, their idea is that after analyzing which car, okay, so these users, he likes some German cars. Then they, after recognize that, they started to send newsletters for German cars. So I think you need to spend some time to know more about your users.
I thought Korean only like Korean cars. Kidding.
And also they continue to maintain the update the date. So if the user couldn't get that much update and no improved application, then the user will leave. So keep continue to maintain the update and then fix the bugs and then adding the new functions in application. That it's just super basic, but that's the way to get the user retentions.
Yeah, and take advantage of the notifications features as well. It's a great way to communicate updates to your users, or like let's say you have upcoming promotions or things that you want to highlight. Notifications are a great way to kind of re-engage users as well.
And then from the developer perspective, is the continue to the updating is pretty, given the cost. Have to pay the cost to develop those application. Then we encourage in Japan market, and also the Korean market, we encourage to change the subscription business model, and that the business model make more easy to invest to the updating too. So that would be more good feedback from the users, and then developer can give the more update, and the user keep continue to get the new functions, and the developer can, the user keep subscribe the contents, then developer can get the monetizations. So that's a good positive spiral as the getting trend in Japan and Korean market.
Okay, so since we are on like business model and making money, so what are some of the commonly seen business model for apps that you have seen? in the market that you work with? I think subscription is a good one.
Yeah, subscription is actually is one big one. Pandora, a lot of our music services and media companies like New York Times, they employ subscription as a way to like get users to monetize a lot of their users. In some cases, you do see some in-app purchases, but it's been largely been subscription.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 大家有什么问题吗？我先看那位女士先举手，女士优先吧。哎，谁能来帮着递一下话筒？哎。
Okay. Hello, I'm from Dolphin Browser, and I'm the product manager from Dolphin. So, because our product is browser, like we have to adapt our product in many different sized Android devices, and this is one of the biggest challenges for Android app is to adapt to many devices. So, for the new material design, do we have any improvements in terms of when you design the app? It can help us better adapt to different size devices. In terms of, for example, the menu may be hidden for those screen size devices or something like that. Yeah, that's my first question. And the second question is just out of curiosity, because I've seen Google has like Google Plus and the Maps have many good material design sample already. But Chrome browser, which I think hasn't been applied the material design yet, is there any specific reason for the Chrome browser hasn't adopt that or something else? Yeah, just those two questions. Thank you.
Okay, should I do English or Chinese? 中文吧，就中文好了。那先回答第一个问题吧。Material design for in tablets or phones 要不同大小的设备。那有两个东西可以说，一个就是在你开发的时候 use fragments, don't use activities for because 你把你的一些 UI 的 elements 的元素放在一个 fragment 里面 ，fragment 可以到时候在不同的设备上调动位置，这是很重要。比如说你在一个电话的设备上。如果你是刚才有一个 phone book 电话簿的一个应用的时候，如果你把主跟详细放在同一个 activity， 就打开不来了。之后你变成在 tablet 在平板电脑上就用不着。所以第一个是要在技术层面上用 fragment， 这是其实我们之前推出 fragment 也是为了这个想解决这个不同设备大小不同。的这个问题。第二个呢，就是在 Lollipop 上，如果你去看 developer.android.com， 其实现在你可以设置一些breakpoint。什么叫 breakpoint？ 就是说，如果你那个设备小过，比如说920 dp， 它直接就会变成另外一个 layout。你就要用在不同的 layout 的 XML 上，不同的大小用不同的 layout 的 XML， 这是可以做到的 Lollipop。应该也可以 app compat 去之前。不同的其他的 Android 的版本，这其实就是真正是一个解决或者尝试解决不同设备的大小的一个问题。而不要做的呢，就是请不要设置说你用某一种品牌的 tab 的平板电脑就用这个 layout， 那就不好，因为好像说我们今年出了 Nexus 9， 它的那个大小4:3，不是16:9，那你如果用这个就完全adapt不了了。就是用那个宽度的大小就好，就比较好。那第二个问题是为什么 Chrome 那边还没有做，对吗？ Material Design。那想回到刚才说 ，Material Design 不是一个 Android 或者是什么平台或者是 Web 的一个specific 的一个东西，而是一个设计的改革、设计的概念。那在 Chrome 上面呢，其实也有做 Material Design。如果你们去google.com/design， 那是 Material Design 的主页。那里也是做 Material Design， 可是当然它不是用 Android， 它是用 JavaScript。那我们现在在上个月吧，在我们的 Chrome 的 Developer Day 的时候，我们之前有 introduce Polymer， 现在也就是有点改进， Polymer 是我们在 JavaScript 层面写的一个为 Materials Design 写的一个框架。你们可以上去Google 再去找 Polymer JavaScript 这一个平台，很容易的就可以把你们的那个网页改成用 Material， 也不是很容易，就是也可以把它改成说用 Material Design 这样子，所以是可以的。可是因为它的Android 跟 Chrome 跟 Web 毕竟有不一样的地方，所以用的语言就不一样。
OK， 那我觉得刚才问的问题很专业，我们再 take 一个问题，然后我们就结束这个 session， 然后下来也可以跟他交流。那我这位就是第二位举手的啊。
我的问题是这样的，就是我一直在用 Google Play 的那个体验上面，就是发现我在 Google Play 上面想搜一个应用的时候，那个尤其是甚至于说那种 Google 自身的应用，比如 Gmail 啊，或者是比如说 Map 啊，或者是说那个 Chrome， 它往往出来的不是 Gmail 自身，而是其他的那种相关的，甚至说那个名字接近的应用。然后这样就会给就是用户一个体验，就是说我找不到我想要的那个特定的应用，然后那个我就担心如果选错的话，可能会带来那个安全上的一些问题。然后再一个对开发者而言的话，我怎么能保证就是我的应用放上去以后，我不会被我的竞争者或者是我的模仿者那个带走我的客户？比如说2048，本来我是想说2048的，结果搜出来一大堆跟2048相接近，然后但不是2048的2048，这样的话就是说那种对于开发者而言，他可能会流失他的用户。就说 Google Play 它有没有什么措施去改善这个体验？
所以您这可能是比较个人化的一个就是体验，然后我们要不然下来看一下，因为可以啊，请 Dana 要不然先说一下。
就是它的 search 好像是也会跟你的用户有关，他常去搜寻的东西也会就是比较偏个人化一点，所以当你每次 search 的时候，都会有可能会有不同的结果出现。对，那你 search 的东西可能也是在 description 里面也有提到2048这个字眼啊或干嘛的，所以它才会被再搜寻到这样子。对。
它有没有什么办法去保证，它那个搜出来的第一个应用它是 official 的这种应用？比如for example, I search AliPlay, I wish the AliPlay was the first one app in my search list.
I think I can.
So actually, one thing I'd like to comment is, actually, the many developers, they really want to be searched when users search. So sometimes they are putting some irrelevant keywords on their descriptions, which we prohibited. So actually, we are working on making descriptions as relevant as possible for that applications. So that's one thing we are working on, and also the algorithm of the search is getting improved. So I think we cannot pin the search result for certain keywords, but we are improving the search algorithm so that user can find the contents that he or she want to find. So that's one comment.
OK， yeah， 所以如果你还有问题，我们可以下去沟通。OK， 那我们今天的这个 panel 就结束了，然后谢谢各位。